Right, good evening, everybody. If we could settle down and get started. And welcome to the first indoor meeting of 2025. Oh, doesn't life go fast? Hardly seemed any time since it was 2020, the start of 2024. Right, I'm going to do the usual introductions to start off with, and then I'll be passing over to Jono. Firstly, I have the delight in welcoming 9 new members to the club. And I believe some of them might be here tonight. Mark Wand, Richard Mile, I think it's pronounced. Not sure. Richard Price, Alex Warren. Hello, Alex. Nice to meet you. Isabel Turner.
On Zoom.
Oh, no. On Zoom.
Yes, on Zoom.
Oh, good. Hello, Isabel. Kay Stevenson, Kate Skidmore, Jonathan Jones, and Ian Young. So nice to meet one here and one in Zoom. And we hope you have a very long and happy association with the club.
Well, Price is up there as well.
Sorry?
Richard Price is up there.
Richard Price is up there. Oh, sorry, I missed that. Right. Delighted, anyway. Delighted to welcome so many new members. Right, I'm just going to run through the future meetings very quickly, just to remind you what's happening. Our next indoor meeting is on Ecuador. David and Nancy Massey will be talking about one of their trips there. They're members. They've travelled there extensively, and I'm sure anybody who's got any idea what the birds are like in Ecuador will know it will be an absolute delight. That is not in this room. It's in the Edith Morley building in room G44. The easiest way to find it, I think, depending on where you park, but if you're at the front of this building, so you've got back to this building, if you look just across to the right, you'll see big building on the right, slightly ahead of us, and it's in there, and you can actually see the open door. If anybody isn't sure where to go, I've got a map with me, and come and see me at break, and I'll make sure that you know how to get to it. But we will again send that information out when we send out the invite in a week or two. And I have an apology to make to anybody who tried to join our last meeting on Zoom and failed because I'd put the wrong link on the website. Mea culpa. I'm glad to say somebody came up with a very good solution to that kind of thing happening again. And we're just going to have one recurring meeting set up now. So you'll have the same link every time and it will just work and get you into the meeting. And I apologise for not having thought about that about 3 years ago when I should have. But there you go. We live and learn. Right. Outdoor, our next trip is on Sunday with the coach trip to Slimbridge that we're sharing with RSPB, Wokingham and Bracknell. I was going to say it's full, but I've had 3 people cancel today because of illness. So if any last minute people want to join us, please see me at the break and let me know. Should be able to squash you in. It'll be a good day. And the next one after that, before the next meeting, is the introduction to birding that Peter Diver's doing to Padworth, I think, on the 18th, Saturday the 18th. Yeah, great. And anybody who's booked to go to Somerset for the weekend, please can you see Rob at break? Right, future events of other organisations. RSPB Reading's next indoor meeting is on January the 14th, when there's a talk on wildlife in the Chilterns from John Mason. And their next outdoor one is Sunday the 19th, when they're going to Wilstone Reservoir in Tring. For the RSPB Wokingham and Bracknell group, their next indoor is tomorrow, January the 9th, on Birds Eggs by Pat Morris. And their next outdoor trip is on Wednesday the 22nd of January, which is Swinley Forest. And last but by no means least, NDOC, their next indoor meeting is this Saturday. That's a members' afternoon. And their next outdoor one is Bob Lyle's Monday Walk on the 20th of January, when they've got a day trip to Milford and Keyhaven. And I will just mention now something coming up soon. It is actually after our next indoor meeting. But don't forget the RSPB Big Garden Bird Watch on the weekend of the 24th to 26th of January. So something I always enjoy that. It's a good excuse just to sit there and do absolutely nothing but watch birds for an hour and housework happened. Has anybody else got any announcements? Anything else from any officers? Peter? Good.
On Saturday.
Do you want to
come down there?
Yeah, they can't hear you on Zoom.
All right.
So you'll have to repeat or get you to come and talk to them from here.
We're talking to you. Hello, everyone. On Saturday afternoon, anyone in the Tilehurst area, there's a community nature afternoon in the United Reformed Church Hall, and BOC will be there with a stall, but lots of other local nature organisations will be there too. So if you're in that area, that part of Reading, then pop along and see us. Come and support our stand.
Yeah, it's from 2 to 4. If anybody wants details of exactly what's happening, then let me know, because I can forward you the email we've got about the organisation. Thanks, Peter. Right, any good recent sightings? What people have been seeing in this lovely weather we've been having? Anything exciting? Oh, Dartford Warbler at Fomley Meadow. Ooh, nice. How long has that been there? Where's your mum? So we've got Dartford Warbler at Fomley Meadow and Firecrest in his mum's garden. Whereabouts is that? Whereabouts is your mum's garden? In Shinfield Road. Oh, so not far away from here. Wow. On your doorstep, nice. Sorry?
Another Dartford at Lee Farm.
And another Dartford at Lee Farm. Oh, yeah, I noticed that been there over since last year, hasn't it? Anything else? Bitten at the Vells. They're good. Has that been there for long, or is it? There last week for a few days, yeah. Yeah. Anything else around? So that's a corn bunting at Ipston, joint millet seed accompanied by a rat. I hope the rat was enjoying it as well. I'm sure it was. Anything else around? The only thing I noticed on Bart's Virgin note today was just the Slavonian grebe that's still at QMR. But otherwise, it's not that many winter species by looks of things about. Okay, well, unless there's anything else on the announcements, it's time to get on to the most important bit of the evening. I will just set up the slides first, and then I will introduce you to our speaker. That look all right on Zoom? Right. I almost could say that we don't really need any introduction, but that's rather rude of me. Very welcome return for Jono, who's been here a couple of times in the last couple of years. Firstly, to tell us about Sri Lanka and then southern Portugal. Very entertaining talks. And I'm thoroughly looking forward to this evening. Tonight, we're closer to home on the North Norfolk coastal path. Jono's a lifelong bird and naturalist and tour guide and author. Anything else that I've missed out, Jono? Cricket coach. Very relevant, I'm sure. So we're going to talk tonight. Oh yes, I should have remembered that from Portugal. Yeah. Right. So this is Jono's going to talk to us tonight about the 47-mile coastal path from Hunstanton to Cromer, which I believe you've walked 3 times. Is that right? Yeah. So we're going to get a lot of good birds, a lot of good places, plus where to stay, where to eat, where to drink, and even a bit on buses, I believe.
We'll cover the whole lot, hopefully. Yes. Good. And, we'll be home by midnight.
Thank you very much, John.
Hello, everybody from Zoom. Good evening to everybody. Real pleasure to be here. Everybody hear me? Ex-primary school teacher, 450 children in the school hall before the days of surround sound, so my voice has mellowed over the years, to say the least. And Norfolk, I've been visiting Norfolk bird watching since the early 70s. I used to go up there by train all the way to Norwich, change at Norwich for Cromer, get the bus from Cromer to Sheringham, arrive at Clyde in time to get the bus to go home again. And had great days out there. Then the great day occurred once when I got myself a BSA Bantam and could get up there on motorbike all in one day and have a fantastic day. You could easily find where I'd gone because it was an English bike, so you just followed the trail of oil along the road and eventually come across me. And I've been going there ever since. My list for Norfolk birds, I suspect, is somewhere in the region of about 300 now. It's just such an amazing site. It has changed a lot over the years. So if we start by, sometimes my zapper works and sometimes it doesn't. Just, there we go. Go back to 2013, which is, there was a tidal surge, one of these events that apparently happens once every 100 years. This was the second time in 15 years. It hasn't been one since. The weather has to be a certain situation. It has to be a very low pressure, which means the sea rises. There has to be a lot of water coming into the North Sea around the top of Scotland. And at the same time, it needs to be a full moon with a high tide. And if all three things of those coincide at the same time, then you get this tidal surge. This is Titchwell. It just literally lifted the sand dunes and moved it about 15 yards inland. This is the bridge at Holme Next The Sea at the visitor centre. If you walk out of the car park, you go over a small pipe, drainage ditch. This was the bridge that you used to walk over. The tidal surge had lifted this, deposited it on the other side of the road. That is a colour picture, not black and white. Everything was that colour that morning. I happened that I was staying in Blakeney at the time, so I was managed to be there. The road was closed. It was absolute just mud bath. This is Clyde Beach, where the, as you can see, the pillbox and what used to be referred to, or still referred to as Clyde Hotel, the beach hotel, that brick construction on the car park. Back in the day, there used to be a cafe there, Arkwright's Cafe, I think it was called. And when I used to go up there during school holidays, I'd take a sleeping bag and I would sleep in the little picnic bench things that were there. Couldn't afford to breakfast or anything. This was followed about 3 weeks later, you might remember, by an American helicopter crashing on the beach. Crashed where the person standing there was. The whole beach was closed for about 5 days. It took 3 days to get the bodies out. There was concern with nuclear stuff on the plane, on the helicopter. The 3 or 4 people who died have their names etched into the patio outside the visitor centre. So the beach was closed for quite a while. And this is the famous East Bank Walk. Again, you can see how much the tide raised the reed bed here 6 feet. Caused a lot of damage. If we look at the route, starting in the west at Hunstanton, and it completes at Cromer, traditionally on the at the end of the pier. It's 47 miles long, roughly, and I normally take 3 days over it. The first time I did it, I did a primary school teacher for 30 years. I'd resigned from teaching to set up my own business, and like all businesses, I'd spent the whole of the summer holiday getting the website, everything set up, and I hadn't got any bookings going on, so I thought I'd go and do the walk for the first week. 1, because I wanted to, and 2, because I could really irritate my ex-colleagues by sending them pictures that they were dealing with their new class back at school and dealing with the register and all the stuff after 6 week holiday. And there's me walking along beaches and being infuriating. So, if we move, no, I didn't think that would work. Is it just the mouse or the back? That one. So the route for day 1, it follows the dotted line. It is a coastal route, and it's at times it can be quite repetitive. You walk on the old sea defences that were built in the 17th, 18th century. To the left are the salt creeks and the beach. To your right is drained land, which is mainly cattle and just scrubland in many places, some marshes. I travel light. I take a pair of binoculars and my camera bag, which I don't have a camera in. I just have some supplies, some sandwiches, and some drink things. The first time I went, I camped, so I went and set my tent up at the campsite in Burnham Deepdale, which you can see on the main road there where the campsite is on the right hand side, and got the bus back into Hunstanton and walked back to the tent. The second day I walked as far as Holme Next The Sea, and then got the bus back, and then the third day returned to fly on the bus and finished at Cromer. On the other two occasions I've stayed at hotels or on along. And the most recent one was 2019. Those of you who've been one of my talks before know that I raised money for a learning centre I'd set up in Sri Lanka, and we needed an injection of cash. So I walked from my front door in Little Haddam in East Herts, Cromer pier, 152 miles in 9 days, and it's the best pub for them. Outstanding. Some of it I can remember. And it was very good fun. The only bad day was Saffron Walden to Newmarket. There are no footpaths around Newmarket because of all the horse racing and the very expensive horses in fields, livery and things. So that was just 22 miles of road walk. And if you know Newmarket, the last 5 miles into Newmarket is a great road. And it is really, that was really 25 miles that day. So let's just have a look and start at Hunstanton. On top of the cliffs, the car park near the Pitch and Put, right next to the lighthouse, very obvious place to start. And the car park itself is the first place that's really good for birds. The first bird I saw when I arrived, got off the bus, was a wheatear. Traditionally, wheatears like to pose and roost on the highest point they can find. So if you've got a fence post or a sign, something like that, you can guarantee the wheatear is going to stand on there. If you've got a flat tarmac car park and you go and put a pebble in the middle of it, I can guarantee the wheatear will go and stand on that pebble. That's what they do. So I was pleased to see a wheatear. In October, November, migration time, and then May, early May, late April, the migration that comes through here can be amazing. These bushes just here, I've had selection of warblers, common ones, less common ones. I've had Icterine warbler in there. I've had melodious warbler, firecrest, ring-ouzels, all sorts pass through there. If it's a good day, if the wind has been coming in off the sea and things have been blown in for shelter, you know it's going to be a good day because Hunstanton Bird Club will be in the car park. If they're not there, move on because it won't be anything. They know when it's a good day. So, and then you're straight out to basically along the beach. This is Gore Point, and a little bit later in the year, great for little terns, sandwich terns, common terns, all roosting on the beach. In winter, huge numbers of waders, massive numbers of waders, tens of thousands of knocked oyster catchers, and out at sea from the car park and along the path here, pair of binoculars. If you look out, it's really good for long-tailed duck, eider, common scoter. There's about 5 velvet scoter out there at the moment, or there were a few weeks ago, good to see. And it's just a good place to stop off, get your telescope out, look out to sea, get those things and move on. And then out into what is basically quite open, scrubby land. In the marram grass, of which there's plenty, at certain times of the year, huge numbers of goldcrests. We'll come across goldcrests a little bit later in the walk, but on one occasion I was walking along here, not doing the walk, birding around here, because it was good for migrant day. I must have counted 30 or 40 goldcrests, and in the case at certain times of the year, the firecrests were in with them as well. But there were garden warblers, blackcap throats, lesser white throats, all in the scrub, all in the brambles and things, and there's always a chance that something rare is going to be in there as well. So it's a good stamp. You've only covered about 4 or 5 miles to get there, and it's a pretty good place. Onto the beach and off to Scalt Head Island. This is just before you get to the first reserve of the walk, which is Holme Next The Sea, and Norfolk Ornithological Association and Norfolk Wildlife Trust Reserve, shared between the two. Anybody a member of the Norfolk Ornithological Association? Yeah, right. So they've got their own hides there, and then the other hides are for the Norfolk Wildlife Trust. If you scout around and dive into outside, see if anything's there, and get out before the NOA chase you out. They can be quite possessive about their belongings, if you've got to remember. Sculpted Island can be good. Word of warning, check the timetables. I think it was about 4 years ago, 3 ladies went over up to the island on horseback, and the tide came in, they couldn't get back. The boats went out and brought the horses home and left the women on the island. Just to make a certain point, every year people get stuck on the island for 6 to 8 hours, and even
Some people on Zoom are having trouble with the volume.
too loud.
No, that when you turn away.
Oh, right, okay, I'll try to keep. Sorry. So I'll raise my voice as I do this. Yeah, Sculpted Island, it is worth going to, but check the tide. And the first birds that we come across are pretty standard, straightforward birds. Reed warbler here. They'll be arriving in a couple of months, 3 months' time now. Just one of those birds that tells you things are changing. Always like it when I'm walking around reed beds, you hear the first one starting to way. And especially early on their arrival, they do like to pose quite readily on the top of the reeds. Once they've started nesting and mating, they tend to drop down and you can see the reeds moving about, but they don't often show quite much. And into Holme, the first change of habitat, conifers, so you get back into sort of goldcrest, cold tips, finch territory, bramblings in winter occasionally. I had a fantastic day here on the beach, overlooking, looking out to sea about 3-4 weeks ago. Slovenian grebe, eider, 2 red-breasted, 40 red-breasted mergansers, great crested grebe, and a guillemot, all in 20 minutes through the scope. So it really was worth looking, and absolutely nothing on the reserve whatsoever. So that made up for that. But also here, you've got the first coffee shop where you can take time for have something to eat. It's about an hour and a half's walk from Hunstanton. I average about 2 miles an hour when I'm wandering on these walks. I'm in no rush, and just take my time. A little story. This is just after the visitor centre, out back on the old sea defences, as you can see on the left, the sea wall, and on the right, reclaimed land. That is Forgham in the distance. These 2 old ladies were from Yorkshire, very Yorkshire, I have to say. And I got chatting to them at the visitor centre over a cup of coffee, and they do the North Norfolk coastal walk every year, which I was impressed by. I was even more impressed when I said, "Oh, how long are you planning on taking it?" They said, "We don't really know, probably about 2 weeks." The joy of just being able to sort of take 2 weeks over walking 47 miles and bird watching. They're not bird watchers, they just enjoy the walk. They book their room in Hunstanton, they walk for 2 or 3 miles, stop for a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, whatever, some cake, get on the bus, go back to Hunstanton. The next day, get on the bus, get off the bus where they got on the previous day, do a couple more miles, and they eventually end up in Cromer. This is about 800 yards after they've left the visitor centre, and they're already 200 yards apart. So they don't even walk together. They were in their 80s, both of them, and they were really, I had a little chat with them and pointed out a few birds, but they weren't particularly interested in that. So I carried on. Whereupon I came across a whole load of snipe that were feeding. So that was a good start. Okay. Don't often see so many altogether. And the bird that used to be really rare. I remember, I think it was the old ornithologist Tony Soper, back in the 1970s, that was the first guy to record breeding little egrets down in Devon. And by about the late 1980s, they'd arrived in a few places in North Norfolk, at Hope and Cromer, and other few areas around there. And it was just one of those birds that's, wow, little egret. I'd only ever seen them in Europe. I'd never seen them in Britain before. Now, of course, you can't move. They are everywhere. We get them in the village where I live, which is nowhere near any water at all. Or in the last few years, just flying over. Absolutely fascinating. And nobody knows why they've got yellow feet. There must be some reason, scientific reason for it. Maybe something to do with in the mud or whatever, but Nobody can come up with a concrete theory as to why they are. It's the only bird that has bright yellow feet and different coloured legs. At the end of there, you get to Forgham Marsh. This is the old building left in the middle of nowhere. Wintertime, superb for barn owls and short-eared owls. If you look east from here, the first thing you see is Titchwell. You're about sort of 2 miles west of Titchwell, the footpath that goes all the way from the beach. And yeah, it's a good little spot. Loads of creeks, red shanks, green shanks, oyster catchers, turnstones, usual sort of stuff that you find in muddy areas. And the owls, and occasionally birds of prey as well. Buzzards, red kites have moved in. There's a tree behind Hunstanton Hall. If you're going out towards Fakenham Way, there's one tree there. I passed it some time ago, counted 92 red kites in one tree. And you only have to go back 15 years. There weren't any red kite in North Norfolk. Where I live now in East Hertfordshire, 2008, I recorded 3 the whole year. I now see 5 a day from my back. I'm just absolutely everywhere. And then another bird here, which is one of the iconic birds of North Norfolk, I think. I always enjoy hearing it. Red shank. The one, the top left there is standing on one of the hides at Titchwell. It was on a lookout as it had a nest right outside the entrance into the hide, and it was piping and getting cross with anybody that was going in and out. And when you got into the hide, the 2 little youngsters, the juveniles, were running around in the long grass. And the other one, just a pleasing photograph I got one morning from a hide at first light, which I always like to do if I'm up in Norfolk on a decent day. The amount of times I drive up there and the light is really good photography and few far between, but I'm trying to make the most of it. And then another bird that I always associate certainly with Titchwell Beach is Sanderling, black legs and chunky little bill there. This one just turning either from or into its breeding plumage there, just some of the wing feathers starting to show orange, and that will get bright orange and red by the time it arrives in the Arctic for breeding. Out to sea on many occasions from all along. Summer visitor, sandwich terns, one with a sprat or something there. Yellow tip to the bill. They arrive late April, beginning of May, and many of them nesting all along the coast, particularly obviously at Blakeney Point on the Cromer there, which I recall back in the 1970s used to be at the end of Blakeney Point, now about 3/4 of a mile from the end of Blakeney Point. The erosion further east along the coast and the deposition of all the rocks and moving along the coast is making Blakeney Point longer and longer and longer all the time. It's probably now a mile longer than it was 50 years ago. Anybody walked from Clyde Beach to Blakeney Point? Yep. Anybody done it twice? Idiots. It is worth it. There is a chap that lives locally I think he lives in Blakeney. He's a bird guide and his name escapes me at the moment. And he's done it enough times that he's worked out that if he'd done not the walk to Blakeney Point and back again, but he'd actually walked in a straight line to the east, he'd now be in Mongolia. So he's done hundreds of trips. There's many a day where he's seen absolutely nothing. There's other days when he's got firsts for Britain. I've done it twice, and I've now piled up over the last 25, 30 years with the guys that run the boats out from Morstan, and they just drop me off and pick up a couple of hours later. So all the hassle. And if you're going in the breeding season, the herring gulls bashing you on the back of the head when you least expect it. And then the other usual tern to be found, the common tern, and again, a summer visitor arriving early May. A bird that's all but now disappeared. Sarah mentioned it earlier, local one, which is always good to hear. As far as I know, in Hertfordshire, it's just about extinct. Go back 20 years, we had a population locally to where I lived that was about 50, 60 strong. They disappeared about 7, 8 years ago, and I haven't seen one since. Horn bunting, a place near Titchwell called Coasley Drying Barns, and there used to be a good population there. The new owners of the barns and the estate there grubbed out many of the hedges and corn buntings first, the corn buntings and the bullfinches here virtually overnight. I haven't seen one up there for 3 or 4 years. In fact, up there now, you very rarely see a bird watcher. This is where the coastal footpath actually leaves the coast. So you don't get to Teachwell. You get to Thornham village and then you head inland to a village called Choseley, and then the footpath goes directly east for about 5 miles and then comes back down into Brancaster because there are no footpaths along Titchwell. The first time I did it, I thought I'd go to Titchwell. I had my rucksack the first time. I was carrying everything with me with my tent, and I thought I'd just leave the tent, the rucksack at the visitor centre tucked around the back, but apparently it was an exploding rucksack, so I couldn't leave it there. So I had to take it with me, and I thought, well, I'll just walk along the beach and come out at Brancaster, where the old Coast Guard station used to be, which is now an ice cream shop, cafe and things. And I didn't realise that there was quite a large river that goes across the beach halfway. So if you did happen to be on the beach that day and you saw somebody divesting themselves of their trousers and most of their clothes with a red rucksack, I wasn't going to walk all the way back. Has anybody ever seen these wind farms going up? I've followed them through Swaffham ad nauseum on the back of lorries. I've seen them appear at the coast in Wells Next The Sea Harbour. I've never actually seen anybody working on them, but they have one advantage, and that is they're all set in concrete, but because they vibrate, they have to have a certain amount of movement, otherwise they would snap. And so consequently, over the last 10 years, mollusks have all fixed themselves to the concrete that they're set in. But the vibration sometimes knocks the mussels and other bits and pieces off and they float to the surface. So whereas 20 years ago, if you wanted to find a raft of scoter or eider, you'd have to scan the sea to find them. Now, look out to where these are, that's where they'll be, because they'll just be sitting waiting for their food to pop up. Or they will dive down at low tide, they'll dive down to get it. And certainly the scoter and occasionally scorp and the great crested grebes will all be out there. Great crested grebes obviously fish, but it's some benefit. Some people moan about the fact that they kill birds. North Norfolk and Titchwell must be one of the best bird watched places in Britain, and I've yet to find any dead birds washed up on the beach at Titchwell, and I don't think anybody else. I'm not sure. Okay, maybe a swan or I don't know. As I say, haven't come across any.
People are now asking whether you can stay nearer the microphone.
We haven't got a microphone.
It's in the camera.
Right. Oh, it's right in the camera. Right, I'll stand here then. Yellowhammer. This is another one at Choseley Barns, and still breeding, but you've got to walk about half a mile away along the hedges now. If you are driving up from Choseley, if you come out to Titchwell and turn left, after about 800 yards, then there's a road to your right with a wooden sign saying Choseley. If you drive up the hill there, right to the top of the hill, the big barns are on the left, you can't miss them. But better than that is have your camera, if you've got a camera, with you in the car, not in the boot, because there are so many birds up the hedge roads there. Both species of partridge galore. Sometimes bullfinch, as I say, the corn bunting of the bullfinch is mainly gone. Marsh harriers in the fields. I've had dotterel normally stop off at certain times of the year, migration to and from. Marsh harriers, hen harriers in the winter. There was a male up there not so long ago. So it is well worth a trip up there, just have a look around. Not so much around the barns, but fields on the way there. Ring ouzels, wheat ears on the barn roof. So worth a trip, Choseley Barns. And then this is at Brancaster Beach. The lights out of the lifeboat station and the coffee shop now. Pretty good place just to take a break before we arrive at Brancaster State, Brancaster Harbour. You can drive onto the sand here, and it is a wonderful place. There's a meet and greet black-headed gull. Do not open your car door and start eating a sandwich, because that's exactly what it's there to do, and it will come and squawk at you until you eventually give up and give it a piece of sandwich. After a storm out at sea, great northern diver, black-throated, red-throated diver in the channels, waders, there's turnstones there that are so confiding they'll run over your feet. Black-tailed godwits, bar-tailed godwits, oyster catchers, lots of stuff on the mud, which you can just sit in the car and watch all around you. Teal on the water. I've had hobbies flying through the reed beds there. Really, really good place. And on one occasion, came across this, which I wasn't anticipating finding. Clearly a golden plover species, longer legs than our regular golden plover. This is the Pacific golden plover, flown 180 degrees in the wrong direction, and was a good find. I was quite pleased to find. Apparently afterwards it had already been reported for about 4 days before, and then had disappeared, hadn't been reported for 3 days. Either it had moved away and come back, or it had just disappeared and nobody had seen it for a few days, but caused quite a bit of a stir. I think it stayed for a couple of weeks. I never know what happens to these birds. If they suddenly realise the error of their ways and suddenly think, I really should be in eastern Sri Lanka now, not North Norfolk, I've got to do something about that. Or if they just sparrowhawk, prey, whatever, or if they're just so exhausted from flying all that distance the wrong way, or sitting on a ship, of course, is another possibility. It's amazing how many rare birds turn up at Ipswich. And I think, there was a tiny little warbler from Thailand that turned up in South Shields a few years ago in a quarry about a quarter of a mile from the docks, and it just coincided with 48 hours previously the docked that had come from Thailand. I think when they opened the holes, it probably flew out and persisted. But that was a good find. And a much more common bird, always good to see, sedge warbler. That I remember seeing my very first sedge warbler when we lived in Lancashire, and I looked out of the kitchen window and there was one sitting on the fence in our back garden in the middle of nowhere. It's just so out of character that was a good piece of fun. And a bird that's still doing well in Norfolk. The numbers are down, but they're more buoyant than they are in many other parts of Britain. Lapwing. And another regular bird, the reed bunting, here a female. And that's quite smart. I love reed bunting. And then at the end of the day one, I'd arrived at the campsite, and I got 71 species of birds for the first day, which became 72 because I heard a tawny owl that night. In the field behind me, there must have been a roost of about 50 curlews came in, and they were chatting away to each other for most of the night. Word of advice here: if you ever find yourself in a supermarket and are tempted by stag's chicken curry in a tin, may I warn you off. It is one of the most revolting things that I've ever eaten in my life. I bought it at the local supermarket, heated it up on my little camping gas stove, and dispatched it to the bin and went to the pub for something to eat. I say this every time I do this talk, and I return to one place, I can't remember which group it was now, and a chap came up to me at half time and said, "You know what you said about stag's curry?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You're right, you know, it's foul." Some people you just can't tell. But if you happen to be around Burnham Deepdale, there's a very good pub called the White Horse, which is very good food. Up until a few years ago, the chef was excellent because he was in my class. So I used to get 20% off, but now he's the head chef at the football ground at Tottenham Hotspur. So where you will not. Day two, from the campsite in the west, and this is the long day. This is about 22 miles all the way to Clyde through Wells Next The Sea. Wells Next The Sea is about halfway, 23 miles done, 23, 24 miles to go, something similar to that. And it's a little bit of a drag to start with because you get back onto exactly the same habitat on the sea defence wall. You go out about 2 miles in a big horseshoe, as you can see there, and you're not making a lot of progress distance-wise, but you're doing a lot of walking to get not very far. But early in the morning, I've left the tent, I've had my bacon sandwiches and things, got up to tea, I'm raring to go. And when you get out to some places, really good, half of the walk. And again, that's pretty straightforward across Stiffkey Marshes, Warham Greens, Morstan, to Blakeney, along the coast of Blakeney, and then back out all the way, finally finishing off at Holme Next The Sea. So yeah, it's about 22 miles. So I normally do this in about 11 hours. So 8 o'clock start. And, I'm finished by that in the evening. That is not my tent. If you wish to rent that tent, it is available at Burnham Deepdale, and the view the following morning very similar to, virtually identical to the photograph where the two ladies from Yorkshire were. And unbelievably, the first bird I saw on the second day of the walk, wheatear, again on the path. And looking back, you can see in the distance the field behind Burnham Deepdale, where all the curlew were roosting. Other interesting bits and bobs that I come across. This is a migrant hawker, female, dragonfly, splendid to find, summer find, normally late into autumn, as frosts normally finish them. And then first unusual bird of the walk, I heard them, you invariably do hear them before they arrive, 3 common crane. The cranes are mainly round at Horsey, which is down on the east side of Norfolk. They breed there, there's a resident breeding population. But every now and again, they get some sort of migration instinct and they go on tour. They go as far as Lakenheath and then Welney and then back to Orton, as far as they go. This is probably a family party, male, female, and probably the first year, second year bird as well. But they are about, as I say, you'll hear them a long, long time before you see them. And what a beautiful setting. A few Egyptian geese or something coming in early misty morning at Burnham Overy Estate, and the windmill that you drive past if you're going along the coach road, the A149. Another bird that has arrived in North Norfolk over the last 5 years. This was one of the first I'd ever seen, cattle even. Again, I'm getting to the point now where I don't bat an eyelid when I see a cattle egret anymore. They're just the first ones I ever saw, like most people, were the ones that used to frequent Dungeness. And but they're now breeding very successfully in North Norfolk. Earlier this end of last year, I counted 31 in one field near the Victoria pub, Lady Anne's Drive at Holme. And then a winter bird, 3 hooper swans, probably heading to somewhere like Welney. They are ringed, so it's highly likely that's where they come from. And again, they get the wanderlust every now and again, go up and down the coast for a little while, but normally return to the fields around Welney. I drove round through there 2 weeks ago, and there's groups of fields there. And some of the farmers are encouraged and financially rewarded for leaving food out, turnips and weeds and things in the field. You can find loads of them there. One of my interests, apart from birds, is modern art. And I'm a great fan of Mark Roscoe. And every now and again, if you leave me too long on my own with a camera, I get carried away and try and sort of start recreating Mark Roscoe. He's the one that just paints 3 stripes. That's the sea, that's the sun, and that's people call that art. I quite like it because it's, well, I can understand it. But I think Mark Roscoe, before he shot himself in 1971, probably missed the real trick. He never put an oyster catcher in the middle of it. I'm sure it would have improved his artwork no end if he had. This is getting on to the beach at Burnham Overy, where we have some stories coming from here, but we'll get to that bit in a little bit. From Brancaster, you pick up the path, and it's a long, long walk out to what's called Gun Hill. There was gun emplacements there from Napoleonic times, First World War, certainly Second World War. It's about 3-4 mile walk to get out there. And the only time I do it when I'm in Norfolk birding is migration season, and again the weather has to be right. It has to have been rained overnight with an easterly bashing in, which will bring the birds in, and you can have a phenomenal 2 hours. Go out another day, and there will be absolutely nothing. Had both experiences, believe you me. In the marrow grass, anything and everything can turn up. End of the boardwalk, there's a tree. It's an apple tree. You'll see it when you arrive there. There's a pile of brambles and an apple. It's a well-known apple. On one occasion, I had Icterine warbler, Sykes warbler in the brambles, pied flycatcher, and red-breasted flycatcher, all in the and around the tree. And if people just say the tree, Burnham ovary, that's where they mean. It's that precise. It really, it's the first tree off the sea. So any bird that is a tree dweller just goes straight for it. If they're like the Sykes warblers and other warblers that get brambles and make a lot of noise and not appear, they'll disappear into the brambles. But in the marrow grass, goldcrests, wheat ears, ring ouzels, you name it, just walk through there, everything. While out at sea, typical shot with Drake Lusander, second they see you, they're off. It's completely gone. But there's two very local to where I'm living at the moment, which is quite unusual for Hertfordshire. And then goldeneye out to sea in the winter months. And on one occasion, only a 7th ever for Britain, spectacled warbler was out in the marrow grass, as you can see. It was a male. It overflew. I've seen them in the Camargue on many occasions. It must have overflown and just carried on going. And one of these birds, it was there for about a fortnight. It sang, it built 3 nests. It was only the 7th for Britain, so the likelihood of a female arriving was absolutely zilch. And then to compound its misery, there was a high tide with one of its nests away that it built to attract a female. Like most birds, the male will make a nest. If you, in a few months' time, if you've got great tits or blue tits getting into your nest box in your garden, it'll probably be the male that will be going in with the grass and bits and bobs to start with. Then he goes courting. Then he brings back a female. He's probably built 3 nests and 3 boxes. And the female will inspect each one. And it's really worth watching because it's like me at home ironing. I can do the ironing till the cows come home. It's never enough. I just don't do any ironing more now. But if you watch, the female will arrive, and the next thing you'll see is all the grass will come straight out of the hole again, and she will completely rebuild the nest to her own specifications. So he's just made a token gesture. The male doesn't know what he's doing. Anyway, so spectacled warbler, it was there for a fortnight, never seen again, disappeared. And another one that I came across walking along, this was attracting. I don't do twitching, I just happen to bump into decent birds because I'm there so frequently. I was walking along the coastal footpath and I came across about 30 blokes just sitting, not doing anything, telescopes on tripods, but they were sitting chatting. And I thought, oh, what's here? They said, oh, there was a brown shrike. I said, where was it? They said, in there. I said, what, that one there? And that's the photograph I got of it. They'd been sitting there for an hour waiting for it, and none of them, it hadn't occurred to any of them that it really does help to look at where the bird might be. First year juvenile brown shrike, familiar with it from Sri Lanka, a very common bird in Sri Lanka, not a common bird in Britain, certainly. And then the third of the egrets that I now, crazy, I saw my first one in Dungeness maybe 15 years ago. I don't bat an eyelid now. Oh, a great white egret. They're just everywhere. Have you got them around here? Yeah, it's just incredible how quickly they've taken. I'm sure night herons will probably be next. Spoonbills obviously have taken over completely in Norfolk. They don't seem to have spread too far from Norfolk, but they are pretty good. But yeah, great white egret. And then a bird that we sadly see anymore. I mean, I can go back 30 years and it was a really common bird. I haven't seen a spotted flycatcher. I think I saw one last year. But the thing with spotted flycatchers is they return to their same little post, so you can set up your camera and try and get it as good as possible. get a nice photo of them. I certainly haven't seen one in North Norfolk for a few years. Came across this, black-tailed godwit. When it comes to ringing, I'm always interested to try and get the details of the ring. I sent the details here. We've got the colour scheme here, and on the right we've got a letter Z on it, so it's red over Z, orange over whatever. Yeah, I think it was yellow over orange. And you send that record off to the BTO. They would send it off to the guy who ringed it. This was ringed in Iceland. It was rung. The rings were added as a youngster when it was on the nest, and the chap says that it was the 4th year it had returned to the wash. Every year it's returned, first of all, to Gibraltar Point in Lincolnshire, then comes over to Titchwell and Holme and moves up and down the coast a little bit. And then he added some amazing facts. Black-tailed godwits pair for life. The females mainly come to the British Isles. Nearly all the black-tailed godwits you will see in Norfolk, Scotland, anywhere in Britain are highly likely to be females. The males go as far as West Africa. Lots of them call it a day in Portugal. If you're ever around Lisbon, Tagus Estuary, anywhere around there, thousands upon thousands of black-tailed godwits. But then they pair for life. They arrive back, the females coming from Norfolk, the male coming from Gambia, they arrive back in the same field in Iceland within 72 hours. If they don't, it's divorce, because they work on the basis that that one didn't make it. How they time that, I just don't understand. It's the female think, right, time for me to go. They'll do it in one hit. The females might stop off, but the Hebrides for a few days for refueling, but most of them do it in one hit. The males will just come straight up through the Bay of Biscay and straight onto Iceland, and they meet up, and then they're only there for about 8 weeks. And then the males prefer it a little bit hotter in Gambian coast and things. So that was worth checking out. I then came across stone chat with green over white and brown over pink or whatever it was, and I sent those records off to the BTO, and the cat came back and said, oh, I know this bird. It's moved 300 yards in all its life. And it's 4 years old, and I ringed it on the nest, and where that barbed wire fence is about 50 yards from where it was born. So not all of them are quite as exciting. This is the end of Lady Anne's Drive at Holcombe, if you know it. It's called Paradise Beach, Holcombe Beach. This is the western end of it. And up until a few years ago, it was a naturist beach. Now, there's nothing better than walking through a naturist beach with a 150 to 600mm lens on my camera, a pair of binoculars and a telescope. Unfortunately, there were certain gentlemen, certain persuasion, that would get into the sand dunes, into the marram grass, to watch the naturists. And the naturists had a name for them, they called them meerkats, because they would get into the sand dunes, pop up, have a look, and go back down again. The local naturists there got a bit fed up with this, and so they had a word with Lord and Lady Leicester at Oakham Hall. Said, we keep calling the police because we've got these sex pests coming, and the police just can't come out every time we complain. So Lord and Lady Leicester employed what became known locally as the sex rangers. Well, the sex rangers were on quad bikes, and they would go up and down, and I'd be walking through the woods here. It's all conifer woods. It's great for certain birds at certain times of the year. Warblers, Pallas's warbler, leaf warblers, yellow-browed warblers, certainly, wood warblers. And they would stop, quite genuinely stop and ask why I was walking around with their binoculars. I have my camera and I've chosen I've got those feathered birds and not ladies at the beach, and they were happy with that. On one occasion, I was walking through there, and there were two very attractive 20, 30-year-old ladies talking to two policemen. The two ladies, not a stitch on, standing, talking to two policemen, the helmets, Kevlar jackets, stab-proof jackets, truncheons. It would have made the greatest photograph for this talk. I went up to them, I said, excuse me, a great photograph. Do you mind if I take the photograph? And the lady said, no, not at all. And they said, sorry, we're on duty. I've got 600mm length. I could have taken it from half a mile away and you would have never known, but it would probably just be my luck. Put it on there and somebody go, it's my brother, the copper. So I didn't get that. The other story on this beach here is it's where the late Queen used to exercise her corgis in the morning. And I was staying at the Victoria at Holme many, many years ago, 35 years ago, when it was slightly run down. And I was doing work for the British Trust for Ornithology, the PTO, in bird surveys and bird counts. And they put me up in block 8. And I would get up early in the morning and walk on the beach and count what other birds there were, especially in the winter, out to sea. Plenty of grebes, scoters, and of course all the pink-foot geese and other geese, great geese. And in the distance was this little lady with a barber and silk head square and 5 corgis walking towards me. And I thought, well, I know who that is. And no reason why I shouldn't keep on walking this way. I recognised her, and I'm sure she knew exactly who I was. And it was at that point that I realised, I wonder how many guns are trained on me at this very moment. So I just waved a good morning. And I got back for my breakfast about 6:30 at Holme, and to be greeted by another lady in barbers who asked me one of the strangest questions I've ever been asked in my life. She came up to me and said, North Norfolk, winter's morning, 6:30, just first light, so maybe October, September, October time maybe. And she came up to me and said, very posh, she said, excuse me, you haven't seen the household cavalry, have you? Norfolk, no, sorry. Yeah, okay. It was Lady Leicester. The household cavalry bring their horses, they've got stables nearby, and they exercise the horses on the beach and in the sand dunes, so you quite frequently see them there, which I didn't right at the time. The household cavalry were there because the Queen was staying at Holme Hall, and they were there to welcome her for breakfast with whatever. What they didn't know was that the head chef, who comes from Birmingham, had been to a party run by Lord and Lady Leicester's son Hugo in their beach house in the sand dunes that night, the previous night, and had drunk himself into absolute oblivion, to the extent that me and the manager of the Victoria carried him to his home, which is one of these state houses. You drive up towards Holme Hall, pushed him through the front window, made sure he wasn't lying on his back, put him on his side. There is no way on earth he was going to be fit for cooking the Queen's breakfast the following morning. We never saw him again. Sort of, I don't know quite what happened to him. But anyway, one of the specialities of winter on Holme Beach, it was a regular, then it disappeared for about 10, 12 years, and it's now been back for 4 or 5 years. Small flock of shorelarks. I think it's about 8 there this year. They range between 8 and 13. They can be quite tricky to find. They range. There's an area that's roped off, and they're invariably somewhere in there. It's just a question of stand and wait till they go up, and then you won't be the only person looking for them. There'll be 4 or 5 other people. And then go and have a look in the dunes, look out to sea. There's all sorts there. Slightly off the beaten track, in the garden of Victoria Hotel, which, as I said, used to be run down, and I think now it's about £420 a night. I think they spent something like £1 million on bringing in furniture from India to make it sort of very large. Glorious in there, but I was too expensive for myself. This magnificent black red star, absolutely superb. Lovely bird to see. And then the other latest bird to succeed and breed in Norfolk, especially at Holme where it first started, is the spoonbill. They must be such efficient feeders because they spend most of their time doing absolutely nothing. So standing around and then into Holme Pines. And the next photo, I always think, is the first noisy photo. Sorry, the next one. Lady Anne's Road, yeah, the bottom here. It's the first noisy photo we've had. You can tell that you're getting near somewhere because suddenly you start coming across people with dogs. You think, oh, right, I'm not 8 miles between A and B. I'm now sort of 1 mile from where humanity is on a regular basis. I'd go back 40, 50 years and I could remember on a wet Wednesday in November, I'd probably be one of 3 bird watchers down Lady Anne's Drive. If you go there on a wet Wednesday in November now, sometimes you're lucky to find a car park within half a mile of the woods. You've got to mortgage your house to park there as well. I think it's £3.80 for 2 hours. When you think they've got 400 cars there. Nice little earner for Lord and Lady Leicester. That's fine. And then Moorhen and Chick just wandered out in front of me. And we'll just quickly whiz into Wells. Like Wells, it's going to change in the next few years. I think it's going to become a little bit more upmarket, and certain things are definitely planned for it. It'll be interesting to see if it actually comes off. So the Acorn sign is for the national footpaths, the long-range footpaths. 23 miles covered, 24 miles to go. And then on the beach at Wells, Sandling, and slightly larger in breeding plumage, Dunlin. Out to Warham Greens near Stiffkey. And if you're driving into Stiffkey, just as you come in, there's a broken lane, private lane on your right that says Ship Maritime Museum. If you go down there, it's broken lane, there's a campsite at the bottom. That overlooks the whole of Warham Greens. And great for hen harriers. There's a pallid harrier there at the moment. It's been there most of the winter. It'll probably be there till February. And then typical habitat for merlin in the summer. For hobby, there's linnets, goldfinches, small finches, plenty, which attract the hobbies and the winter merlins. And on the ground, huge numbers of golden plovers, egrets. And then looking out to the old lifeboat station at Blakeney Point. On to Morstan, which is where you get the boats out to the see the seals. And I was walking along here on one occasion and couldn't help but notice one sycamore tree that I gave up counting 300 goldcrests in it. I went through it hoping to find a firecrest. It just got to the point where I just held the camera as a leaf and waited for a bird to come on it. They were just everywhere. Couldn't really miss with that. And they were just so busy. And they must have all come in off the sea at night. And I've seen flocks of sort of 5 or 6 goldcrests at a time, but I've never seen 3 more. The whole tree was just alive with movement. And on the shingle, meadow pipit into Blakeney, the Blakeney Harbour Hotel. The tidal surge of 2013 is marked on the wall there, not as high as the one, was it 1957? The one that did all the damage in Canvey Island and everything, whether it was the 1950s. It's not as high as that one, but it's not that far off. And then back out to Cly, and final few birds of the day. Get to Cly about 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, so you might just get in back. And there's several barn owls that will be seen flying there. And then at Cly, they've got the old harbour, which is now completely silted up and full of reeds. And over the last 10 years, bearded reedlings have settled there and are quite easy to find, female or juvenile here. And then the last 2 bits and pieces from Cly. The Georgian Dragon used to be called the George. Previous to that was the Georgian Dragon. It's now been renamed again, the Georgian Dragon. New management now, supposed to be very good for a few years, except anything but. I appreciate that I've done this before, but there might just be a few people here who weren't here last time, or a few people on Zoom. Excuse me a minute. Talking of my Sri Lankan program, what I've done is put a small pamphlet together on a guide to the less well-known hotspots of Norfolk. I was going to print them off and sell them, but it got prohibitively, ridiculously expensive. So if you sign up on the sheet there, if you would like a copy, or email me if you're on Zoom, I will email it to you for a minimum donation of £5, which goes to my Sri Lankan Learning Centre here. And if anybody would like a day's birding, some details there, I'll take them out, pick them up from your accommodation. I'm moving to Norfolk a week on Tuesday, a week on Monday. South Norfolk, not me and my wife after 40 odd years in Bishop Stortford. So just to finish off the first half, a few looks. I go into orphanages and do some little science things with some of the Sri Lankan orphans. Here we are at the centre, and some of our volunteers from universities. We get them from Swansea University, mainly marine biologists, because my friend that oversees the day-to-day management, Anoma, here, Anoma Aligaiwadu, is a marine biologist himself, leading authority on whale migration. So the students come spend a month. They do 2 days at the centre, and we've established a turtle hatchery, so they do a couple of days at the turtle hatchery, and then they have 3 days to do what they want. This was money we raised during COVID, or just after. I gave the mayor's charity presentation in Bishop Stortford. We raised £3,000 for Isabel Hospice and Mine Garden, £1,500 each. And because the school centre wasn't operating at the time, we put boxes of pencils, crayons, colouring kits, bags of rice and noodles and bits and pieces, and distributed those to the children. And as you can see very kindly, and then I printed off the cover with a picture of the mayor and me saying donated that. We gave out about 150 of those boxes, which was good to see. And here we have presentation, top left, and the present centre that we have bottom right, with my old motorbike there as well. And hopefully I'll be there in about 4 weeks' time, 5 weeks' time. Moving to Norfolk, my wife has great plans of taking a bathroom apart, because we've got 2 bathrooms in the house which we don't need, and decorating. My advice is totally on such things. She knows what to do, so I just leave her to it. So she's quite happy if I get out of the way and get on the plane and go to Sri Lanka for 10 days. Suits me. Quick story, this is Hansika. As you can see, very little of her. She's 18 years old. She would come to the school every morning. I would take all the students for a breakfast, little samosas called waddy waddies, and a cup of coffee, or they prefer ginger beer. And she texted me, she got about a job interview. She eventually got the job after a 4-hour written English exam and a day's working behind the reception desk at the 5-star hotel. That was taken in 2018. This was 2022. Completely changed her life. She earns more money than the combined income of both parents. And still, as I said to you this time last year, she's on boyfriends and hats. And then a traditional Sri Lankan welcome coconut. So when I first arrived in the school. At that point, it was time to take a break. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back soon.
Right, let's get back on. I'm having a bit of a struggle with the light with it. For those of you on Zoom, most of the technical problems tonight are here, in that the heating's not on. This is why you may see some of us getting more and more coats on. And also, I can't get the lights to work properly. Other than that, it's wonderful.
So if you had come, you would have warmed it up.
Well, you're probably the only person who's warm, because you can move about. Anyway, I will get back to the lights and see what I can do, and leave you in the capable hands of Jono.
Thank you very much. And on to day 3. Very many big thanks to the people who've bought the little guide. Do hope it helps and highlights some of the places that you might not be familiar with that I've come across over the years. And for those on Zoom, if you would like to email me, then Sue has my details, and I'll forward that with details for bank. Thank you very much indeed. Day 3, the final bit. It has changed since I first did it in 2009. It used to go from Clyde, just off the map there on the west, and head all the way through Sheringham to Cromer. But at one point, after Sheringham, you had to go inland again because along the cliff tops there is all caravan sites which were private. Over the last 5 years, Norfolk County Council has negotiated with all the caravan sites, and there is now a public footpath that goes all the way along the cliff. So you can go straight from Sheringham over Beeston Pump, down into the caravan sites, all along the cliffs, all the way into Cromer. But my route that we're seeing today will be the old route where you go up into some fantastic deciduous woodland. Day 3 dawned with me on 96 species. And I thought, right, we're going through deciduous woodland, so great spotted woodpecker, tree, creeper, nuthatch, and conifers there, but I already got colted, so I was pretty confident on 100, which would be good. So we set off, and we don't seem to be going anywhere. There we go. I think all of us are fairly familiar with Clyde Reserve, and it's changed. As I said earlier, I've been going there for the best part of 50 years now. Migration patterns have moved a little bit, but people moan about Clyde not being what it was in the 1950s, 60s and 70s. And I think part of that is not because Clyde has become less accessible to the birds. I think that along the Norfolk coast now, there are so many habitats that replicate Clyde that the birds are now more stretched out. I mean, I first came across one of the first marsh sandpipers ever at Clyde in about 1972-73. You may be familiar with the splendid bird artist from the 1960s and 70s, a guy called Richie Richardson, who lived in Clyde and spent just about every day of his life on Clyde Reserve. Splendid man. Took youngsters under his arm, anybody who was keen on birds. What he would make of today's birders, I don't know. He, like I had done when I was 16, 17, 18, would be all round Clyde, pair of oily jeans, black leather motorbike jacket, leave the motorbike somewhere with the helmet tied to the handlebars, and spend our day just with a pair of binoculars. And he would have a little notepad, and he would draw about 8 different lines, and it would be an avocet, 6 different pencil lines, and it would be an oyster catcher. He illustrated the Collins Guide to Birdwatching, not the field guide, but the actual book written by, I forgot his name now, but the actual guide on how to birdwatch, where to birdwatch, and all his line drawings there. Sadly died far too young in 1977. At the end of the East Bank walk now is a viewing area called the Richie Rich, being named after that. And I haven't been in there for years, but there used to be a fantastic corner dedicated to him in the Georgian Dragon pub, where he's got his black leather jacket on with the wings coming down. He's got beanie bobble hat pulled over his head, and he's got a on his arm, and he's looking really gothic. And it was a pleasure, a real pleasure birding with him when I was 15, 16, 17, 18. I was at uni when, fortunately, he died. And on one occasion, I was walking with him, and he just pointed to the sky, and he Kretschmar's bunting. So he ever heard it once, and that was in Faroe Islands about 3 weeks ago. So he said, I know where that would be. And we walked over to Wolseley Hills near Snipes Marsh, up into the woodland, into some open fields. And sure enough, there it was in the bird watching. Only one I've ever seen. Water rail, a Clyde special. You just have to get lucky with them. That is an atrocious, dark, dismal grey day. I just couldn't get speed through the camera. I shoot in manual. I try to keep shutter speed at around 0.002 of a second. I try and keep the ISO down as low as possible to about 1,000. If I can get it below that, even better. And I'll be shooting it around f6.3 to f.8, depending on the light. If I have to go to 1,600, 2,000 ISO into pack up, not going to get condition that I like, unless it's a really rare bird. If you want to see a screamingly good view of a bird, leave your camera in the car. Want to see a really good, screamingly good view of a rare bird, leave your binoculars. And if you want to see a bird that could be a rare, but you're not sure because it's so similar to something else, just leave everything. And all you've got is you. Curlew sandpiper. I do courses for people on bird watching. One of them is Know Your Dunlin. And I always encourage people to learn their dunlins, watch dunlins, see how they move, the shape, the size, everything about them. And then once you're really familiar with dunlins, curlew sandpiper will stand out very clearly. It's a completely different bird. It moves in a different way. It's more rotund. It's different markings, but get lost if you're not looking too carefully. And then I think this is probably the same photo or similar photo from the same shoot of this is black-tailed godwit. It first light, we saw the red shank earlier. And a bird that passes through Norfolk every year. I've only ever seen one in Hertfordshire. It's not Hertfordshire. Normally associates with Western Britain and Wales in its ear, and a few of the RSPB reserves in mid Wales are these pied flycatchers. I was with a friend when I saw this one. He said, "Why isn't it a spotted flycatcher?" I said, "Because it hasn't got any spots." But he sort of he's a very, very good photographer, but he won't mind if I say he's not a typical bird, and that's fine. He says, "Why is that a meadow pipit, not a rock pipit?" What's that pipit? What's it standing on? A rock. There you go. You got your answer. Right? He's happy. The drag of walking to Sheringham mainly is along the coast here. It is very heavy going. The birds make it special, but it is shingle and it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You can go on for a long, long time, and it's a bit of a grin and bear situation. But if you are plodding along and you come across beard owls, then it all makes it back. So that's pretty good. Spot the bird. In the middle, just to the left of the yellow flowers, wryneck. This caused a bit of an argument here. This is at Gramborough, just east of Clyde, Gramborough Hill. A regular drop-off point for certain birds after a storm out at sea, especially warblers. I think pied flycatcher was taken there actually as well. This wryneck was clearly distressed, rather exhausted. It had probably been blown 300 miles off course. It was probably following the Scandinavian coast and got blown all the way across the North Sea. It was fairly exhausted, and the big camera lens boys were trying to attract it out to get the photograph and getting closer and closer, and I was getting closer and closer with them. To the extent that they eventually got their phone out and played the alarm call of a wryneck really loud, which obviously encouraged a very tired and exhausted bird to come out and have a look around to see where it was, thereby leaving itself hugely open to predation from anything that's there. Weasels, rats, birds of prey, you name it, was leaving itself open. So I gave them a piece of my mind about the fact sort of birds like that just need to be left alone. You don't need to be 3 yards away from them when you've got 600mm lens. Get a photograph of it and all the rest of it. That's them really, that's their conscience, not mine. And I stormed off and I went up to where the Muffleborough collection is, a few miles further east, where I stumbled straight into citrine wagtail. First year citrine wagtail, 3 wing bars on its wings, told me that it wasn't. It was in with about 20 pied wags, and I picked that out, rang that through to Shirley at the office at Clyde, got the news out as quickly as possible, and the first 5 people that turned up were the guys that I just had a row with. The wryneck, etiquette dictates that you do show them where the bird is, and then once they've done, so I rather begrudgingly, I didn't point it out. I said, "Oh, look, see that sandy bit where you've got all those wagtails, there's about 30 wagtails, it's in there, bye," and left them to it. So I'd like to think they all went home with some lovely photographs of pied wagtails. And but I'd spent enough time there just to compound my anger. I got back to the car park to find I got £25 parking fine because I'd been more than an hour. So that didn't cheer me up. But anyway, seeing a wryneck did. And another thing that you get frequently at Titchwell and at Clyde, normally early in the morning, Chinese water deer. Yeah, first light. They'll walk through Clyde, they'll go across the straits in the open. The rest of the day, don't see them. They're there. You can often see where the reeds are moving, and occasionally you'll see 2 or 3 marsh harriers come up all in one go. There used to be one at Forgham on the left as you walk into the beach at Titchwell that was a right tatty one and was regularly on show. But they are splendid things to see. And then occasionally, I heard mention of Dartford warblers around here. If you go to Kelling Heath, there's Dartford warblers there all the time. But occasionally they do come down near Gramper. I've seen them there a few times. Dartford warblers are a strange bird. You're probably seeing them at the moment because it's cold, and they are hardwired not to realise that when there is no food, they can actually move somewhere else to look for it. They don't. Which is why some years Dartford warbler numbers just crash. They just starve to death. They freeze to death. At Dungeness, there's a little triangle just as you get to Dungeness. There's Dartford warblers there, and then there's no Dartford warblers for about 4 years. And then they return, and they're there for 2 years. Kelling Heath's another one. They'll suddenly, after a really cold winter, there won't be any there. Not because they've gone elsewhere. It's that they just don't do that. So there used to be 2 or 3 down at a place called Kelling Quags. And they've long since gone. But it's a good bird to see when you get it. Chiff chaff, regular bird. And then the inevitable spoonbill. And again, I saw my first spoonbill there 35 years ago, and it was just, wow. In those days, they came over from the IJsselmeer. When the IJsselmeer froze in Holland, they would migrate over the North Sea to North Norfolk. Now they're very much a breeding bird. For a bird that size, the amount of times I've sat in bird hides, and you said, where did that spoonbill come from? You've got a bird that's sort of this tall, and it just appears. It didn't fly in. They've got a very distinctive flight thing with the neck often wobbling about a bit, but they do just suddenly appear. And I do like a teal in full plumage, really smart. Yeah, the shingle looking there all the way towards Sheringham, and get a bit tedious as not much to see. It's at times like this then I start sort of getting these artistic ideas of grandeur, and then I think, no, I'll just take a photograph of an avocet. That's a lot better. But so yeah, I can remember seeing the first avocets there, and you think I did a bird count for the RSPB at Titchwell once, 668 avocet in one afternoon, and just I walked around with a clicker and click them. And then one of my favourite wildfowl, in the sunlight, Drake Pochard. Drake Pochard's quite interesting. If you're down at Dungeness, you'll see mainly drakes. The females obviously like a little bit more warmth. They go to the south of France and Spain for overwinter. The drakes call it a day by the time they get to the south coast of England. Very few of them make it over the channel. It's not because they can't be bothered and they're lazy. It's basically because they want to get back to the breeding ground to establish a territory before the female returns. So that they're there for courtship and they know where they are. So that's the reasoning behind that. And then occasionally you come across a juvenile bird that has, you may be the first human being it's ever come across. Let's start here. I had to walk backwards. This was on the sluice gates at Clyde on the east bank, and it just wouldn't leave me alone. I was walking further and further away with a 600mm lens. I couldn't. It was literally on the table here, and it was too close for a photo. So that was quite late in the day. It was a shame it wasn't earlier. And then a few views. If you want to have a couple of hours driving army vehicles around, then Muckleborough Collection is the place for you. I've got a friend who's a great military historian. He goes up there one day a year to relive his childhood dreams of driving tanks and other things. And he went up there this time last year. It was about -3, getting inside a metal car or a metal vehicle with no heating, and it's been parked outside all night. You think it's cold in here. Even he had to moan about it. And then the windmills and just general views. And then the long walk up to the observation tower for the Coast Guard at the top of the hill by the golf course, which, as you can see, is slowly but surely falling into the sea. Many years ago, used to get fulmars nesting along here. Not anymore. They've moved to West Runton, and even then they're few and far between, mainly because the cliff is forever collapsing. About 20 years ago, I was walking along the footpath here, and as you can see, on occasions, it is very close to the edge of the cliff, and the cliff is very, very loose. So please, if you are there, keep well in 5-6 yards away from the edge. Don't go to the edge because the grass actually hangs over and there's nothing underneath you. This chap, all dressed in camouflage, which was rather ironic because he got green camouflage on and he was on a sandy cliff, so you could see him from about 2 miles away. And he got a big lens and he was trying to photograph the fulmars. Now, a lot of us know what happens if you get too close to a fulmar's nest. They basically regurgitate all the fish oil that's in their gizzard and can spray it about 3 yards. I warned him that if he got too close, he probably wouldn't be very well received when he got home. And he didn't pay too much attention. And then I heard a shout and some screaming. I turned around, fearful that he'd actually fallen down the cliff. He hadn't, but he had got too close and he was absolutely covered in this reeking, rotten fish oil from head to toe. And he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, well, it's probably I came by bus. And started going into sharing goods and buy some clothes, my friend. Yeah, so good. Cheered me up. And then you get through Sheringham. I invariably stop for a traditional pint in either the Lobster or the Wyndham Arms on the front there. If you want some really good photos of turnstones, go down onto the promenade, buy a packet of chips. They will come and feed out your hand. They are unusual turnstones. They are turnstone obesius. They can hardly fly. But they will sit just there and wait for chips and bread. And they'll sit on the walls and look at you and demand food with menaces. So you can get some really good photos and impress your friends. On your telephone, they'll actually come up to you. If you hold a chip on top of your phone, you can get just their beat. And that's the end of the walk. As I said, it didn't used to. You could now go all the way along the cliff. Previously, you couldn't. So you had to go inland into deciduous forest. Plenty of really well-established sweet chestnuts, Spanish chestnuts. And it was just it was a pleasure to be in a slightly different habitat, different birds, different everything else. And then my second noisy photograph. At the end, you arrive in Sheringham, in Cromer, near the old crab smoking factory, near the station. You walk down the hill and you're there. I got to this point, I was on 99 species. And I thought, wow, we're going through a housing estate. Greenfinch. I bet there's a greenfinch on somebody's bird table. So I was sort of peering over people's back fences and things, looking for bird feeders. And then I thought, actually, you know what? If I turned up and said to the door, oh, and then I saw a greenfinch and that made 100 species, some of you in the audience would think, yeah, it's a coincidence that you ended up with 100. But if I say I ended up with 99, sounds more plausible in a way, I think. So I'm going to stick with 99. And as I said, the end of the walk, Cromer Pier, and this is September and 2009, so that's, good God, 15, 16 years ago. That's what I walk with. And my camera bag normally has my sandwiches, a bottle of beer, and that's a celebratory pint at the pub before you go onto the pier. I only took a couple hundred photos because I wasn't really in the business of doing photography. A lot of the photographs I take, they're just over the years. So just to whiz through a few of the birds, Brent geese, internationally important numbers, massive numbers at the moment. And if you're a serious lister, look for the pale-bellied, the dark-bellied and the bants. They'll all be there, but I tend not to bother with that. One of the more familiar sized turnstones in the mud. That's probably at Brancaster Station, probably taken from the driving seat of the car. Always turnstones are brilliant. Avocets are incredibly aggressive when they've got eggs and young. Wouldn't think twice of beating up a grey lag goose. Wheat ears are common all the way along spring and autumn passage. As I said, invariably you'll find them. They're splendid male there, maybe a Greenland one, slightly larger. Bearded reedling, you get a nice sunny day, they'll pop up, the male there, and probably a juvenile. If it's slightly windy, forget it. They don't come up with agree. You'll still hear the ping ping. You might see them flying with a long tail, but they don't bode too well. Photograph-wise, I don't sit around and wait for them. Years and years ago, I came across, do you remember the photograph of the weasel on the back of a green woodpecker? Yeah. Well, about 2 weeks after that came out, I was in Elmley and I came across a heron having a fight with a weasel. And I took some photographs through the windscreen of my car and they were rubbish and I was really disappointed. And then the heron flew off with the weasel holding on to the beak of the heron, and it flew round and it landed about 6 yards away from the car. I wound down the window, took hundreds of photos as eventually the weasel was stabbed through the throat and eaten head first in one go. And following on the success of the green woodpecker and weasel photo, which the chap made no money at all because he put it on Facebook into the domain and the newspapers took it off there. I then rang my cousin who was editor of the Mail on Sunday, Russell Forgham, and he put me in contact with I don't think you can use the word reputable when it comes to photographic agencies in Fleet Street, but as good as they get. And they copyrighted it and everything for me, and I made over £1,000. It was in the Telegraph, the Mail, the Mirror. Most newspapers covered it. Just because it was a follow-on and Weasel gets its own back on the green woodpecker story type thing. Made over £1,000 from Mine Garden. And then about a year later, I got a phone call from Warner Brothers in Belgium asking if they could use the photograph for a quiz. Yeah, £150. You send me the £150, I'll release the photograph. All went smoothly and did that. The photographs went viral. Once I copyrighted them and secured my right to them, I then put them on Facebook and I put them on my blog. They went viral. I was sitting in the pub with my mate on a Sunday evening and my phone was just going ping, 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 ping. It went 1.5 million views in South Korea alone. I had people emailing me asking if they could use the photograph because it proved that God existed. Somebody in Africa was on for that one. It was amazing. It really it just took off. And then, that's why I started this story, the BBC Kent rang me up and asked if I could do an interview. I said, yeah, fine. They said, right, you'll be on the 6 o'clock news on the radio. I said, fine, great, I'll be ready. 6 o'clock came and went, nothing happened. So I sat down, it was a Friday evening, with my wife. I'd cooked a meal, we'd opened a bottle of wine, we were drinking the wine. I went at 9 o'clock. Suddenly I was on the 9 o'clock news, by which time I was halfway through a bottle of red. And the interview went swimmingly and they were asking. And then she asked a question that showed me that she had no concept of what had actually happened here. When she said, and how long did you wait? I said 57 years. And that was the end of the interview, basically. So, yeah, I sort of pointed out that I hadn't gone and sat next to a small pond waiting for a heron to come along and eat a weasel. Not the way it worked. So, yeah, my point being that I just tend to walk along with the photograph, the camera, and click, click, click. If it works, great. If it doesn't, I'm not too fussed. Seeing the bird is more important than getting it. But here we have got a nice photograph. I'm just trying to work out. Male goldfinch, I think, and a juvenile. Male has the red that comes beyond the eye. Female has it that comes down the side of the eye. Look carefully next time, you'll be able to see. Bigfoot geese, like the Brent geese, international numbers. And if you want to be quite pedantic about them, you can start individually sorting them out, because like Buick swans, they all have individual markings on the bill. So one that you probably don't see so much around, we did the English partridge or the grey partridge. I suspect their numbers are going to decrease because shooting is becoming a very expensive sport. A friend of mine, farmer, he runs a pheasant and partridge shoot in Little Haddon, and since Brexit, most of the eggs and most of the poults come from France, and to bring them over to England now is ridiculously costly. About £2.50 per egg, and he's putting down 600 pheasants, so he's looking at sort of £1,500 to put some pheasants in the woodland with some partridge, and he just can't cover his costs. So I think pheasants and partridges over the next 10 years will start to become a rarer thing in woodland. And the increase in buzzards and kites is hitting them pretty hard, being ground feeders. Plenty of knots, yellow-legged wader, party of jays, the inevitable kingfisher, female, red on the bill, on the lower mandible, male will be all black. Some of you might remember the Ladybird series, What to Look For in Spring or Summer. It was a fantastic, it was 4 books by Ladybird, and it was all about nature. All I got for Christmas and birthdays was nature books. That's from about the age of 4 or 5. By the time I got to 7, I knew if it was a good book or a bad book, depending on the quality of the artwork. If it sort of looked like a bullfinch but wasn't a bullfinch, I wasn't interested in the book at all. And in one of those, What to Look For in Spring, there was a tree, and it had every possible bird that you would associate with a tree. There must have been 30 species of bird in this one tree. I spent years looking for that tree. Never found it. Right? The whole book was just a complete and utter fabrication and lie, and I was sucked into it. But I did, however, find it on Titchwell Beach. At low tide, grey plover, godwits, curlew flying by, to the left sanderlings, to the right dunlin, a little bit further, oyster catchers, black-headed gulls, out to sea, scoters, eiders, grebes, Slavonian grebe, black-necked grebes, all sorts, it's all there. I've never managed the Titchwell 100, which is always a challenge. I think on Titchwell, on one occasion, I did 95 species in a day. And that was from dawn to doing a couple of moth nights there as well. So I was there all day. But if you look out to sea anywhere along Guillemot, quite regular. And in about September, you'll get rafts of razorbills coming by. Probably ones that have bred and fledged in where the cliffs beginning would be Bemborough. Bempton, that's it, Bempton, thank you. And what happens is, especially with the razorbills, one of the adults will just throw themselves into the sea and the youngster will follow, and they just float. The young can't fly at that time. They will just float on the tide, and about 3 weeks later, they're going past North Norfolk. They've come all the way around the North Sea, and they'll just carry on sort of past Sheringham, Cromer, down through Essex, and then eventually the juvenile will get enough strength to be able to fly, and then they do. And likewise, the guillemots will just quite happily just roll along on the tide. I read somewhere not so long ago, pintail, the most common duck in the world. Obviously not in this country, but I think if you go to certain places in Canada and colder climes, you'll find that there are all over the place. And then another bird. This is an Iceland gull. There's similar, there's a glaucous gull that was a first-year bird, similar to this one, dumped in by the fishing boat many years ago. And one of the fishermen said to me, as I looked at it, I said, oh, glaucous gull, you don't see many of those. Oh, this was a first-year bird. He said, that's been here for 4 years now. I thought, yeah. That's time it changed its feathers. And another good bird to find, lapwing bunting. Annual visitor to North Norfolk, there for a few days. I came across one day I had snow bunting, Iceland gull, and Lapland bunting, all within about half a mile of each other near Sheringham, near the golf course. And then quick scout through, black head rather than brown head, indicating Mediterranean gull, middle there. Rough, just nice reflection. Snow bunting, some years ago, I was taking a group of people bird watching, and they'd stipulated that one bird they'd like to see they'd never seen before would be snow bunting. I took them to Cranberry Hill, where there's a flock of about 70 that year, and a lot of them are first-year birds. They've never seen humans before. They do not move. I said, look, there they are. They all came up. Wander in there with your cameras, you'll get some great photographs. And they stood there, 3 of them. They turned around to me and they said, we can't see them. They're down there. They were literally at their feet. They were scanning the shingle everywhere. And they'll go through. They feed on the seeds of the horned poppy that grows there and other bits and pieces. Turtle dove. Holme Next The Sea is probably the best place to fly occasionally, but Holme Next The Sea got a lot of very dense vegetation, which I like. Don't see many of those. And then out at sea, if you're lucky, great phalarope. The inevitable, I always like seeing them, shell duck. And then on one occasion, a very confiding herring gull here in coming out of winter plumage. And it was very proud of its fish. It was just literally walking up and down, you know, the wall at North Next The Sea where everybody sits and eats their fish and chips in the evening. It was just wandering up and down there where people were eating their fish and chips. I've got fish. Wasn't eating it, just showing it. And then about 10 years ago, there was an invasion of glossy ibis down in southern Spain. There was a population explosion of them. They had a really good breeding year. The first year birds all moved north. This one arrived at Clyde for a few days, lousy photograph. And then one of my final pictures, but redshank, got that little tip of the downturn on the bill right at the end, white supercilium, and just the different bird from the normal redshank. On one occasion, I got halfway to Norfolk and suddenly realised that I got the camera on the back seat and the battery was on the side in the kitchen recharging the night before. So I hadn't got a camera. I knew I was going to come across something good. I got to Titchwell. It was about 2 weeks before I was doing one of my weighted horses, and there were 5 spotted redshanks right next to one another, and they got themselves into order of plumage. I got on the left was full summer in black, and to the right was full winter, similar to this one, and then it was halfway, exactly halfway, and 3/4. And everybody else was taking photographs. I kept, oh, can you email it to me? Email, and they never did. So that would have been a handy one. And then a bird you very rarely see. It's probably present a lot more than people give it credit for. Spotted. Just a very fortunate. That's the only shot I got of it. It appeared out of the reeds at the Island Hide at Titchwell many, many years ago for all of about 30 seconds before it disappeared. I suspect it's there on a regular basis, but there's just so much reed there, it very rarely shows itself. Melodious warbler, unusual. If you come across them and hear them, you'll question why it's called melodious, because one thing it is not is melodious. Male red-backed shrike, not a common bird anymore, sadly. Last bred in England in the late 50s, early 60s, I seem to remember. And on the other hand, bird that's moved in very quickly, red kite, with some scavenged food. And then a bird that is seriously declining, a bird that we all take for granted when we're in North Norfolk, but serious problems. The curlew. That's such an iconic sound of both moorland and SeaWorld. Little stint, juvenile. You can see what's called the tram lines down the back, 2 white lines that go down the back. And then marsh harrier, I think in the 1970s, Britain had 7 breeding pairs left. It was on the verge of extinction in Britain, and now they've got 7 breeding pairs at Cly alone, which is superb. Out to sea again, Arctic skuas. I do like skuas. They always cause an argument because everybody knows better than everybody else. And they always turn out to be Pomerine when they're back there Arctic. Red-crested pochard, invariably of unknown origin. They're just red-crested pochard, basically. Rather twee photograph of a pied wagtail. A few bits and bobs, golden plover, bullfinch, jet-leg partridge, and another reed bunting. And then another self-found. Good bird to see. Wheatear, obviously, of some species. Very upright, very long-legged, Isabelline wheatear. And I took the next series of photos. I can't remember how many photos of this I took. It was between Pye and Canberra Hill on the coast. And I was just walking along there. Well, I'd seen it from a distance, and I just wheatear. I got close. How it's so easy to get misled in when you see birds in different light. This was all in about 10-15 minutes, and it goes from a sort of very dull grey to quite a russety thing, and different shapes, but those legs considerably longer than our standard wheatear, just made for a good bird. And again, phone that through to Pye, and within minutes there were lots of people all over it. Good to see. Sea buckthorn and sea holly, one producing loads of berries for migrants in the autumn, and the other, Victorian children used to pick up the roots of sea holly and candyfy them, made sweets out of them. And then a few other bits and bobs. Azure damselfly, another migrant hawker, and a wall butterfly in its traditional habitat, called hopcat. It's the only place you'll find them, you know. And bush cricket, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spotted burnet moth, the day flying moth on bugle by the looks of it, and then common seal and grey seal. So needs to go to Specsavers. And then horned poppy, which is a really important plant on the shingle, and fires its seeds up to 3 meters away. I've collected the seeds. I've tried growing them on shingle at home. I've watered it with brine, and I've given it salt, and I put it in sand. Can't get anywhere with it at all. So I've just left them there, but it's lovely plant to see, and amazing how hardy they are. That concludes the talk. Very many thanks for your attention. Thank you for listening on Zoom. Hope you managed to hear some of it, apart from when I talked, turned around and things. So thank you for joining us there. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? I don't know anymore, but
Is the footpath, the path quality reasonable? Are there areas that get impassable certain times of year?
the only
Can I just repeat that? Just asking about the condition of the.
all right. Sorry, somebody just asked if there's anywhere on the 47 miles where the paths are not good. Yes, there is one area. If it's been raining, it's between Wells and Stiffkey, about 3 miles out of Wells. When you come through Wells, you walk along the harbour, and then you carry straight on past the Chandlers, past the sailing club, which is footpath that you very rarely drive, and then the footpath takes you out. Eventually, you emerge at Morstan. But about a mile or two after, you get onto the marshes, and if it's been raining, it's really muddy there. Just going through the whole of the walk, I can't think of anywhere else.
Okay.
Some of it's tarmac, so from Morstan to Blakeney is now tarmacked. Most of it is pretty good. Walking boots only, but no leave for weather.
Any other questions? We've got a few minutes. Right at the back there.
Why do you start when you do the bonus as a section?
At
Section.
that's not part of that walk. You can do another walk that takes that route in. You'd have to come from King's Lynn on the footpath. That one. If I'm driving up there, I do pop into Snettisham occasionally. Apart from the Wader Spectacular, I really find that Snettisham is a rather long walk for sometimes very little return. having said that, on one occasion I left my camera in the car because I didn't think I'd be seeing anything, and there was a long-tailed duck about 4 yards in front of me. See.
That question was, by the way, for those of you on Zoom, why
Snettisham.
not start earlier
Yeah.
and do Snettisham?
Traditionally, I start from the lighthouse, but if you go into Hunstanton, it's supposed to start from the tourist office in the middle of the town. So I don't bother with that bit.
Any other questions? We've
In
gone over
which
a
case,
little.
can I just finally finish off by saying I've been looking forward to coming here tonight for one main reason. And 6 months ago, in 4 days' time, I was in hospital having huge cancer surgery in Acton Hospital near Wembley. And I set my target of this talk being where I was hoping to be up and running as normally as possible. As it happened, I made a swifter recovery than I'd anticipated, and certainly my surgeon had anticipated. I'm now back up to 120, 130 miles a month walking, eating mainly stuff that I can eat. There's certain things that I'm not going to eat. I still have dementia moments and forget and suddenly get halfway through a plate of something with sweet corn and think I'm supposed to eat that. I'm too late now, and I'm not supposed to have that second glass of wine, but I'm going to and see what happens. Yes, it was. It was, you know, when you set a target. So I have done a talk, and Sarah here came out for a day in Norfolk with me. Was it October? Yeah. So that was 2-3 months after my operation, and that all went well. So good to be here. Yeah. And I got the 5. The mathematics of it is quite startling. You will be proud to know that you have been listening to the record holder of polyps in the southeast of England.
Come back this way, Big Jono.
Sorry. I have lost 369 polyps and I have 582 to go. So I will be having further surgery in the next few years, but 2025 they've written me off. Nothing is going to happen until 2020.
Nice to hear that he's agreed to come back and talk to us next season as well on the Gambia.
In a bath chair. Yeah.
For those of you on Zoom, Jono will be coming back next year to talk about the Gambia. So
they'll wheel me in because it'll just be a torso and a head by then, I think. So
anyway, I'm going to have to draw it to a close. Thank you so much, Jono.
It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much indeed.